This is a recap of Chapter 7 of Certified Financial Planner Stephen Smith's book, Power Up Your 401k. Go to powerupyour401k.com to download the full book, or you can access the audiobook there. And of course, we've got a video version as well on YouTube. You can find all the chapters and our follow ups there, as well as more information at powerupyour401k.com. So we're talking about Chapter 7, our final follow-up here on the book. And Steve, I want to jump right into that open hand philosophy that you talk about in this last chapter. And you tease this a couple of times during the book, but it's that idea of living life with an open hand instead of a closed fist. And I'm curious, you talk about what that means, of course, and we've been through that. I'm just curious, where did you come across that? Where did you adapt that philosophy for your life? And can you talk about some of the other impacts that that's maybe had for you outside of the financial world by approaching life that way?
I've heard it from several speakers along the way, but it really goes back to the roots from where I come from, which is on the farm. And just that open hand philosophy. I'll give you some of my history, which is interesting to talk about. But on our farm, we had a major tornado rip through it in the Midwest, Tornado Alley. And the interesting piece, obviously devastating, animals lost their lives, no family members were in the basement, all protected. That part is good. And buildings and machinery wrecked. But first it was the whole neighborhood showed up. Okay. And then the whole community showed up. And just to help restore it, of course, there was insurance money, but there was an effort of wanting to help. And in return, there's different things that happened in the neighborhood that we would go help them. That's that open hand philosophy. And I'll give you the most amazing one was when my grandfather got colon cancer, stage 4. Right before we had to take the harvest out, and we had our own harvest to take out as well. And we're working as many hours as the body would handle. And the neat thing is that the community knew of this story, and they organized themselves to come out, and they took out my grandfather's entire farm in 3 days and only asked for fuel in return. It was quite amazing. And wow. That is where that was impressed on me, of living the open hand, because living like this, those things don't happen.
Yeah. It's easy to see after a few stories like that why that stuck with you all these years, and you've built your life around that and your business, and it just seems to have kind of worked its way into all the nooks and crannies of your day-to-day life. That's pretty cool to hear. You talked about finding joy in retirement in this last chapter, which I love, kind of ending on that note, of course. And you highlighted 3 stories that showed some very different ways of enjoying every minute in retirement. And I'm curious, when you're meeting with folks, how active are you as a participant in helping clients identify what it is that's going to bring them joy in their later years? If you've got 3 stories like that have so many different directions you can go in, I would imagine that might be a fun task, but also a difficult one to help people narrow down to that joy and that angle.
It's definitely not where we start. First, we have to put the plan together to get them to that financial security, and then transitioning later on, planning for that transition of earning money to living on your investments. So we really start there. But once we start to get closer, and we're no longer focused on how do we get to be retired, and we're more focused on, things are looking pretty good. At that point, we start talking more about trusts and children. And then after we get through that piece of it, then I'm like, is there anything else that kind of lights you up, makes you want to get up in the morning? And we talk about that in 2 different veins. One is from a giving perspective, but the other is for, what do you want to do in retirement? Do you want to, volunteer somewhere? Do you want to travel? Do you want to help, disadvantaged whatever? Do you want to be part of an education program, or, the list is a mile long. So I don't try to give them the idea. What lights you up? Because what I found, and this is a little morbid, but what I've found is retirees that have purpose, and there's a million different purposes in the world, live longer and live happier. That's the bottom line.
Mm.
The ones that don't have purpose and sit in a chair and watch TV and play a little cards. Not that I'm against any of those things. I do those things myself in moderation, of course, but they have to have purpose. Otherwise, depression comes in and a whole lot of bad things. So that's really when I get serious and say, we got to find something that lights you up every day after work is finished.
That's so cool. Yeah, absolutely. That may be, I was going to ask you for your final thought. So if readers of your book or listeners or watchers in this case, since we did this in so many formats, if folks can take away one lesson from this last chapter, or let's zoom out since we're kind of at the end here, the book as a whole, what would that one lesson or that one takeaway be?
The one takeaway from the book would be that we should design our life on paper, on purpose. Even if you're using computer software, that principle still applies.
On
Yes,
paper.
on paper, right? Yes. And do that on purpose and make sure that your life doesn't end with you. Pass it on.
I like that. Pass it on. Fantastic. Well, Steve, thank you so much for writing the book, sharing all those great stories and insights with us, and for also engaging in these follow-up conversations as well. I hope they provided some extra color commentary for folks and gave them some additional insight into who you are, what you're all about, and we just appreciate all of your insight into these things and for taking this journey with us.
Thanks, Walt.
To those of you who have listened to the whole book or watched the follow-ups or engaged with us in some way, shape, or form, thank you for tuning in and listening as well. I'll remind you one more time that you can find the book in total in the audiobook form, the video, and of course the actual written form, or digitally, or if you want to even get a hard copy of it. All those different ways to access and lots of other resources are available at powerupyour401k.com. That's kind of the hub where everything lives. So powerupyour401k.com, your place to go to check out and get more information on the things that we've talked about today, plus so much more. For Steve, I'm Walter Storhol. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope everybody enjoyed the book, Power Up Your 401k. Steve, thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you, Walt.
This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.